Hello and welcome to the CRM Zen Show, where we talk about all things Zoho. This is episode 325, recorded for Friday, October 18th. Fast times at Invoice High. From Zenatta Consulting, my name is Tyler Colt
Greg Belnap, and let's get right on into the show.
Let us do it. So Brett has some family in town, I think, so sitting out here today. So I'm joined by Greg Belnap, of course, my co-pilot, my trusty right-hand man here for the week. Pretty slow news week in the world of Zoho. So we do have a couple stories from apps that you probably haven't thought about in quite a while. But outside of that, we'll be ready to jump in here in a moment. Before we do, let's get a quick word from our sponsor.
Are you struggling to get your team trained in using Zoho effectively? Considering the hefty costs of team meetings and onboarding sessions dedicated to Zoho training, there has to be an easier way. Say hello to efficiency with our Zoho team training courses. Zoho CRM made easy. Become a project management pro, top-tier customer support, and maximize your marketing impact. Are you ready to equip your team? Start today at zenatta.com/training and let us lead the way.
All right. So first story here from the world of Zoho Invoice. Interesting. We didn't see this for Zoho Books, but you can pretty much always assume that when something happens in Invoice, it's likely going on in Books as well. There's an update just with some new customization features for Zoho Invoice. Things like changing the theme of templates, or the color, I should say, of those themes. So really, this is going to change things.
This is all in the mobile version.
Yep, all in the mobile app. So changing the theme of templates, kind of just dropping in a couple different colors, adding bank details from within the mobile app. These kind of show up down at the bottom of an invoice, right? So if you're going to allow like wire payments or direct ACH where you're not using like Stripe or Plaid or something like that, you can just drop those in at the bottom. Mm-hmm. You can now also add signature to transactions. It's kind of interesting because normally you'll put a signature more on like a estimate than you would on an invoice, but you can do those here from within the invoices. Interestingly, again, like Greg mentioned, a lot of this stuff is really just in that mobile app, the settings there. You also now have control over various modules that you're going to use. So if you aren't using something like quotes or time tracking, you can actually disable those from within the mobile app without having to get onto the browser to make those changes. So just kind of a couple minor ones here in the world of Invoice, primarily thinking about the mobile edition. I almost kind of wonder if some of these were rolled out for Zoho Solo, which kind of has like a version of Zoho Invoice in it that's mobile only. And they're like, hey, you know what? If we added these here, we might as well just add them to the mobile app of Invoice too. That's a guess, not a fact, but we will have to see if more and more features come out for mobile over time.
Yeah, it's interesting that it looks like I'm looking at the enable modules section here, and it looks like that on iOS, unless they just have like the fields set up differently, but in iOS, it looks like you can enable or disable certain modules, but then on the Android version, then you also have your like I can't tell if is module preference, like, is that part of just like a scroll page and we're seeing the discount preferences there, or can you not set that in iOS? It looks like it might be like it looks like in the iOS version it's on like its own page that you go into, whereas in the Android version it looks like it's probably part of like a large list of your general
general preferences. Yeah, so it looks like here, if we look at their path, right, it's enable more modules versus preferences. So they might have just put it in a different section, but should be about the same in terms of functionality.
Yeah.
All right, next update, like I said, going to hit an app or two that we don't think about too often. One of them is going to be Zoho Backstage. So there's an app that came out quite a while back. It's used similar to like an Eventbrite, so hosting your event, selling tickets, printing badges. It's actually pretty solid, pretty full-featured. Nice benefit is that you don't have to pay a percent fee for the ticket sales. So oftentimes it's like more expensive per event than Eventbrite, but cheaper on the ticket sales side. So kind of just a math equation of what's going to save you some money. Really, the big one here is the release of the API guide for Backstage. This is kind of funny because this app's been out for quite a while. I was surprised that this didn't exist before, but better late than never.
And eagle-eyed viewers will note that we are on V3 of the Zoho Backstage API, yet we're just now getting an API guide, or at least maybe it's an API guide just for the latest version. Could be, I don't know.
Like could be. So you've got those API abilities to get events, create events, add members to, or actually no, just get portal members. Interesting thing with this API is there are definitely endpoints that are available that are not used or that are not viewed in this API doc. So one, for example, is we set up an integration through Flow where a form was submitted and it added them as a ticketed member to an event for free. It was like kind of like a VIP members get this free ticket, right?
Yeah.
And there is definitely an endpoint in there to add a member, but that's not here in the public API. So probably exists somewhere that could be found, but just not documented here. So take a look at Flow as well. They do have a handful of endpoints and actions there that are available that aren't actually written out in the general guide for the API.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we've run into here at Zenatta as well, is occasionally you'll have an endpoint that it exists somewhere because you know it does because the functionality is in the app already. It's just not written down on their normal documentation. And sometimes you can reach out to Zoho support and ask like, hey, is there an API endpoint for doing this thing? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, sure there is. Here it is.
Right,
and then they'll give it to you. Yeah. Wish they would said put it on the website, but neither here nor
save
there.
them a support request. One other kind of minor update here that they did sneak in is early access availability for a functionality called companion tickets. So a companion ticket would be like you have a primary attendee and maybe they're going to register an additional guest like friend, family, colleagues. So really these are essentially going to be paid or free, but they kind of group people up into like bundles of tickets that you'll be able to sell or include like, hey, you buy a ticket and you get 2 free companions, right? They don't need to register for their own tickets separately. You can register for them as a companion. So that's kind of nice in the case of like, hey, Zenatta's going to Zoholics. I'm going to go and buy all the tickets and I'll just register Greg and Josh and Jordan while I'm doing that, essentially as companions. So that's actually pretty nice. I can imagine a lot of people will end up using that. Couple other just odds and ends upgrades for September. More options in the approvals for registrations, additional forms, some gamification around check-ins and event sign-ins, font support, why not? More customization for badges, some additional currency, and some updates to approval emails in terms of the types of data that you can merge in. Overall, solid application. You always have to do that pricing math, and you do have to think about like, most people might have Eventbrite installed on their phone versus Backstage they might not. So you'll have to make that determination, but don't overlook it. It is actually quite a good app for managing your events.
Yeah, assuming that they're large events, that you're just saying that if you were doing frequent small events, Backstage is probably not, at least if you want to do ticketing through it.
Yeah.
Backstage is probably not the one that you would want to use for, like, I run a performance group that we do like, 30 attendance for a show twice a month. You have to pay like, you have to get like an enterprise level license or like an enterprise level, like voucher per event. So you have to pay like per event, in Zoho Backstage. And I want to say it's a couple $1,000 or something per event. So so you need to be making some pretty good returns on these events if you want to do the ticketing through Zoho Backstage. So so definitely made for like conferences, conventions, that kind of thing.
Either high ticket value or high volume of ticket sales, but just kind of do that break even against Eventbrite. and decide accordingly. Next update here comes from Zoho Creator. So this is some upcoming updates for October. We are halfway through the month, so these will ideally come in the back half of this month. A few updates. I'll kind of touch on a few, Greg, and then we'll let you dive in on any that kind of speak to you. So some additional widget APIs when you're using JavaScript. So just a little bit more flexibility for deploying dynamic widgets. Updating multiple fields in a single deluge statement. This is pretty nice. So really the goal here is improving efficiency and execution time. Execution time, of course, in Zoho functions can be a problem if you have like a really big, heavy function that's doing a lot of work. So cutting down on some of that by doing a bulk update is really nice. Bunch of different page enhancements. So one thing that I really like is date grouping. So if you're making some type of chart or report, you can kind of define some additional groupings for time period. I do really like when you have that split of month versus like month and year, because sometimes you might want a chart that shows like each year within the same month and how they've grown versus like a full timeline. So that flexibility is nice, and it gets you away from having to do silly things like writing a script that writes the month to a field, and then you report on that if you want that like year over year type data. Doing some intervals, so essentially like defining how you want certain tick marks to be grouped, data labels, theme colors, filters, which is great. These seem like user filters, right? So like I'm on the front end, I'm looking at a report, and I have a filter that I can use on the fly. Those are great. Always love that level of flexibility. So, and then last one, actually, no, two more. Improved backups. This is something that kind of across the board I know Zoho's working on. The big one I'm still waiting for is back it up to work drive automatically. That has just been a long time coming for CRM creators, some of these different apps. And then a couple search enhancements on the staging page for environments. Any of these, Greg, kind of speak to you that you'd want to highlight for listeners using Creator?
Yeah, the one that I'm most interested in is the updating multiple fields, where, mostly just because they say that it's a deluge task, so that means it's going to be like Zoho dot. Well, I don't know if it's going to be an integrated task where it's going to be Zoho dot creator dot something, or because in Creator Deluge, kind of it's like a slightly different like dialect to the deluge you might write in CRM or Desk or Projects. So, because I know, like, if I wanted to update a field in a Creator record, just a single field, right? What you can do is you can set that value by on the left-hand side of your equal sign, write the name of the form that the record's associated to, then criteria for that record, so like ID equals whatever, or any value, whatever, and then then the field name, and then set that equal to whatever value you want that field updated to. So it's really slick, quick, and easy. You don't need to create like a map or whatever, and then push it into an update record API, Zoho.creator.update record or anything like that. So I'm curious with the update multiple fields, what that's going to look like. Are you now going to add like maybe you are now passing in a map or a list or something. So just excited for whenever they post what that is supposed to look like, where it's going to be documented.
What does this look like? Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, you're going to be able to do this. It's like, cool. How?
One nice thing though too that I did mention is there are certain plan limits around like statement execution, like when you're actually running an update to create, and so this would actually help you stay under that limit. So if you're like hammering on Creator really hard and you're starting to bump into those, switching it where like if I'm going to update 3 fields, now I'm going to make one update to 3 fields rather than 3 updates one at a time. So that is pretty nice. If you are finding yourself bumping into those limits, there's now a workaround that should be able to cut down on some of the statement usage. Next one here from the world of Zoho Forms. This is another update that was in the video we made a couple weeks back that Zoho is now announcing. So this is for forms. We've got a new type of field with it, which is a month-year field. So essentially what this is it would give a form submitter the ability to pick a month and a year, so October 2024, without having to put in a particular date. Some of the use cases they've listed out for this are like project timelines, maybe a subscription service where like, hey, I want to start in June, but I don't really care what day. Appointment bookings for services, that's a little less of a use case that I would imagine, but an interesting one. The one thing I did think about is like, where would this go if I wrote it to like CRM? Because there isn't like a month year field there. Do I write it to string? Do I set some date in the middle and put it in a date field?
I mean, my guess is that this is just creating a date time value of probably just the first of the month.
Yeah,
but we're only displaying the month and year. Let's see, because they do say under enhancing efficiency, if you have a date time field in your form, you can use data filled in that field to adjust the range of the month year field.
Because you can set in these like within 6 months of today, or maybe like within 6 months of this other date time field is when you should be able to choose.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, my guess is that it's going to come back just as a date time set for the first of the month of that particular month. But maybe you're right. Maybe it is a string. We'll just have we'll have to hop in there and see what that data looks like coming in. Just interesting to me that going the route of adding a new field and not like this feels like something like a setting that you would want to add just to the regular
date field.
Yeah. Like, allow selection of date, month, or years. But maybe that's really hard to implement the way that it's currently integrated into the system. I don't know. So, well, it's, I mean, they had to have made it because somebody wanted it, right?
Yeah, somebody wanted it.
There was a demand. I don't think they really make a whole lot of stuff that like no one is asking for. So at least one person said, "Hey, can I get a month? Can I get a month year field in here, please?"
And they're like, "Yeah, why not?" There you go.
Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so a nice one. One of those ones that, hey, if you don't need it, just don't look at it. But it is there if anyone does have that need where we're going to be picking a month and a year, but not a particular day. Last one here, there's a bit of like a PSA, kind of just an update. So it sounds like in the world of Zoho Invoice, there have been some issues where downloading the PDF from an email of an invoice that's sent from Zoho Invoice has been throwing some false positives, kind of showing up as like a risky download with some types of antivirus softwares. So Zoho's really just writing this as a PSA that they're like, hey, we are aware, we're working directly with those antivirus tools that are flagging it, and we are going to get that fixed. So just be aware. Odds and ends, I don't think this is an endemic issue. I haven't heard a lot about it in like the partner channels, where normally if something has become really big and it's happening to everybody, then there's a lot of hubbub about it. In this case, I haven't seen anything. So it's probably one or two antivirus tools that are just getting tripped up. So just be aware of that if you are a Zoho Invoice user. Shouldn't have an issue like receiving the email, opening it digitally, paying it. It's just on the download of that PDF where they're seeing a bit of issues. So just be aware if you are a Zoho Invoice user.
Yeah, and I think they're saying that it's because it says download transaction PDFs from Zoho Invoice. So I think this might actually be referring to people that are in the app.
Got
it. When you're in the app and you're on like an invoice, you can, there's a little menu drop down, a little button you can click. It says download as PDF. So I think they're saying that was getting some weird flags when trying to download those.
Very odd. Well, I guess just keep that in mind. If you see anything funky, make sure to just reach out to Zoho support. They'll help you sort it out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that, we've actually covered the news here for the week. Like I said, kind of a slow one. So let us jump right on into our implementation of the week. All right. So implementation this week comes from Ben and Andrew. This is automated late fees in Zoho Books Invoices. Interestingly, we've actually done the alternative or the opposite of this as an implementation before, which was doing an early payment discount, which removes itself after a certain period of time. This is kind of the opposite, where in this case, it was 15 days after the due date. We're going to look to apply a certain late fee. So first thing we did, they did have a set of customers where they were basically saying, hey, we do a ton of business with these guys. We're never going to charge them a late fee. They're good for it. So we set up a field at the customer level that they can basically just check a box and say, hey, Zenatta is exempt from late fees. It will never apply on their invoices. Then we set up a workflow and a function that will trigger 15 days after that due date if the invoice is not paid. This function will check if the customer is exempt, and then if not, it'll proceed by calculating the late fee. Late fee is kind of a dynamic fee where it's either going to be 15% of the invoice value or a fixed fee based on the invoice total. So basically, like if 15% is above a number, we're going to charge that. 15% is below a number, we're going to charge this fixed rate. And that will just be automatically applied as an invoice adjustment at that date. Without the customer having to think about it, right? So there's a business rule that they have in place. System can just be taught that rule, and then it can handle it for you on a long-term basis. So life becomes a whole lot easier when you start implementing some Deluge inside of Zoho.
Yeah, awesome. Great implementation here. I like the foresight of let's make sure we have a way that we can exempt people that shouldn't be a part of this.
Yeah.
Always important to think about that kind of stuff. Whenever you have some kind of rule, always make a little escape hatch for yourself. If you want to be able to exempt somebody from a particular workflow or
and the way
automation.
This works here, it is like a one-time trigger. So if you did want to remove it for an invoice, you could. It's not going to add itself back again later. It's like just that one time it's going to add it. It's not on future edits. So they do have that off ramp afterwards. If someone's like, hey, can I pretty please get this removed? And they want to say, yeah, sure, whatever, man. You can just remove it. But yeah, you definitely want to bake in those steps to make sure that you're able to make things a little bit dynamic. Because once you automate them, you don't want to think about them, right? So now it's just check that box on the customer. They'll never get a late fee. You don't have to think about it for each invoice that you're sending out to them.
Now that I'm thinking about it, you might actually want to set it up so that if somebody is exempt, that they get sent a message saying, hey, by the way, we waived your late fee for this invoice. Like let them know they've been exempted from the late fees. That probably earned you some good karma there.
I like that idea.
Like,
Very wise.
Hey, there's a late fee. Don't worry, we've already waived it for you.
Good. Yeah, we know you're good for it. That is a good idea. I mean, we'll recommend that to the customer. Well, sweet. So that covers it for this week. Again, big shout out to Ben and Andrew. Appreciate your great work here in setting this up. So with that, I think we're ready to jump on over into our code share of the week. All right, so code share over on Club Zenatta. Again, shameless plug. If you don't know, Club Zenatta is our free Zoho community where you can sign up, get access to all the code shares. We've got Q&A on there, basically just a community of Zoho nerds helping other Zoho nerds. So over there, like I mentioned, we do post a weekly code share. This week it comes from Renato on the Zenatta team. And essentially converting full state and province names to two-letter codes inside a Zoho Deluge. Oh man, are we asked to do this all the time? One shape or form, it's always a little bit different. This is kind of a pretty universal way. Now I will highlight, and I'll kind of pass this off to you, Greg. There are a lot of different approaches you can do here. You create a module to store the data. You could park a table in analytics, but somewhere you're going to create a table of all the states and all the abbreviations. right? And essentially use that to find and replace any of your data. But yeah, I'll hand this to you, Greg, to kind of break it down for us.
Yeah, so this method, this is showing like if you are creating it all just natively within a Deluge script, not storing it in an external table like you were mentioning. So if for no other reason, we've provided this here for you so you can copy and paste this map into your code without having to write it out yourself. It's so what Renato's added here that has a little bit more of that Zenatta zest to it, as I like to say, is also adding in that we're checking what country are we looking at. So depending on which country it is, we'll have some we'll either do the state province map or just the province map, right? Also, I like in Renato's code here his variable name, American State of Interest, which is my favorite post-punk band of the late 2000s. Come on, don't tell me you wouldn't go to an American State of Interest concert.
I would. I'd be there.
That'd be pretty good.
Eyeshadow on and everything.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a typical code. I think we've actually done code shares on this same thing a couple of times, but it's always good to just have it because we're just trying to add more versions of this to increase the SEO so that when somebody searches, they're guaranteed to find one of our solutions, because everybody needs this every once in a while of like, I need to get all of my states aligned. So like some of them are coming in as codes, some are coming in as full names, and I just want them all one way or the other. So converting them when they come in. Nice job here, Renato.
Yeah, and really the only thing I will highlight on this is the one downside is you would need the states spelled correctly for the store.
Yep.
We do see cases where they're not always spelled correctly. If you're in a situation like that, you may have to look at like a third-party API provider. There are ones where you can send data to, and it has like a huge bank of common misspellings, and it'll kind of sort that out for you. Those are oftentimes like fractional cents per credit or per usage. So one thing to consider, like if you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, this is great, but like my data is way unreliable in terms of spelling, and structure, you could look into doing it that way as well. It will just have some incremental cost for that third-party API.
Yeah, sometimes my state data is just really tucked away.
Yeah. Emphasis on the T.
Yeah.
So with that, we're ready to jump over to what's new on Zenatta.com. You can't help yourself, can you? All right, so double header on the Zenatta website this week. So just this week, Wayne put together a full product tutorial on Zoho campaigns. This is one that we just haven't done in a while, so we thought we'd circle around and give it an update. As we always like to do, if you're sick of hearing us talk about stuff, well, you can read about it over on the blog. So he kind of breaks down all the different topics and areas that we went into as part of that webinar. So everything from getting your data in, getting it grouped into lists and segments, getting things associated to topics. This is a common step that gets missed where someone's like, hey, I sent out this email to a list of 1,000 people. It didn't send it to any of them. What happened? First thing to look at is, did you associate them with the topic? Because if you didn't, it just won't send it. And then sending out one-shot or automated drips of emails through campaigns and workflows. So well worth giving this a read. Video's awesome too if you like that format, and both are going to be available there over on Zenatta.com. Next one here as part 2 of our doubleheader. This is a case study from Tayden Impact Partners. So they're an organizational development and DEI consulting firm. We work with them for quite a while now. Hunter on the Zenatta team has been helping them out. Really, this has been like a full build out. So leads, deal flow, third-party integrations. We've done a lot of workflow and document management via WorkDrive. We've been working with a handful of different people on their team, Dynasty being one of the main ones, and she gave us some great feedback and input here. So yeah, they've really been able to cut down a ton on manual processes, improve response times, and reducing kind of overall costs of software. Because before it's like, hey, you're paying for this CRM, you're paying for this file management tool, you got things running through Zapier, you've got some form tool that you're paying for. And so bring all that over into Zoho One, connect all those dots, and then you'll have a great, highly functional system just like they do. So thanks again, Dynasty and team. They're absolutely great to work with over there. And we always appreciate when we can do a case study with an awesome client like them.
Yeah, always love seeing that, particularly that reduction of manual processes. That's always like the best thing that we can do is just like, you just don't need to do as much little busy work, because there's a lot of stuff that could just get copied over automatically from one spot to another. Trigger an email because it always goes the same way every time. Happy to see them.
I had a prospect the other week who said that in a really funny way. He's like, I want the computer to do the computer stuff and the people to do people stuff. And it's like, that's actually a really good, succinct way of putting it. Like, why would we have a person doing pricing math over and over and over again? Like, the math is the same. The system can do it. Let's save that person for giving people phone calls and talking to them and doing human things that only the people can do. So, always great when we can make an impact like that, and awesome to get a case study. All right, so last bit of the week here. Let's jump back on over to YouTube for our tip of the week. All right, so this is a tip that I put together kind of running through an update that we covered on the CRM Zen Show last week. All about subform updates. So essentially now you are able to make updates, additions, removals to subforms directly from the detail view. So you no longer need to click on edit. So this is kind of a quick video going through each of those. They did also kind of sneak in the addition of filters and sorting, which is awesome, especially filters. That's a huge one. Like, hey, I've got this quote. Let me filter it and just see the services versus the goods. Like, need to have type stuff on these. So really nice, great update. We thought we would do kind of a call out video for it just to make sure that everybody saw it with just a quick run through of how to use it. Seeing now my lighting in this video is funky. I look very ghoulish, but that is okay. We still wanted to get this out just to make sure that everybody knows that it's here and that it will be coming to a CRM near you in the next month or so, I think, with their phased rollout plan.
Yeah. One thing to note is that as of right now, there is no client script support for these subforms in the detail view right now, as far as I've been able to see from my research. So and also, if you had a script written that runs on the create page, you would have to try to copy it over into the detail page anyway. But so for the moment, no automatic filling of subform entries or things like that via client script on the detail page yet. But I'm sure that
you do. You'd add maybe like a checkbox right above it. You do your additions. You just check the checkbox, right? Imagine if it's like right under the add-on section here. I just click that and it does the client script for me. Would kind of be the solve.
Yep. Yeah. That's what you do.
Got it. And outside of that, we do want to do a big thank you to everybody who has supported us over here on YouTube. We have hit 20,000 subscribers. Look at all those angels. Happy angels. So we really appreciate everybody's support over here on YouTube. It's a labor of love, putting together the news, the tips, the full tutorials, really everything that's, hopefully at least everything that you need to get up to speed on Zoho. So always really, really appreciate that support. Just head on over to youtube.com/Zenatta, hit that big old subscribe button, and that'll make Greg very, very happy. For every subscriber, Greg has to grow 1 more millimeter of beard hair. So keep it rolling, keep it growing. That's what we all need in our life.
Keep it rolling, keep it growing.
All right. Well, I think that is it for this week. Thanks so much for joining, Greg. Always a pleasure to have you on. If you want to get in touch with myself, Brett, Josh, really anyone on the Zenatta team, just head over to zenatta.com and click on Book a Meeting. Also on the website is where you'll find complete episodes of the show, as well as links to all the stories we discussed today. If you want that news delivered to your inbox every Monday morning, be sure to also subscribe to our newsletter.
And head over to club.zenatta.com to take a look at the code share we talked about today, as well as all the other code shares we've shared over the years. And if you want to get your team trained on the key Zoho apps in less than a week, head over to zenatta.com/training and sign up. We've got a lot of great training courses over there.
And as always, we appreciate when you like and subscribe here on YouTube, as well as your choice of podcast app. We'll see you next Friday.
You knew it was a slow news week, so you brought me on to make sure that it still ran for 45 minutes or whatever.
It was me and Josh to be a 10-minute show this week, so...
Yeah.